I was slumped at my desk, drained after another grueling 12-hour shift, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my younger brother, Max. "Hey, man. Just wanted to say, don't worry about coming to the wedding. It's a formal event, and we're keeping the guest list tight. No hard feelings, okay? No hard feelings? No hard feelings?" I paid for everything: the venue, the catering, the band, the decorations, even the wedding dress. Not because I offered, but because my parents guilt-tripped me into it. "You're the successful older brother. It's your responsibility to help your family." Like an idiot, I believed them. And now, after draining my savings to fund this circus, they had the audacity to tell me I wasn't even invited? My chest tightened. My fingers trembled as I reread the message. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it was a joke. I called Max. No answer. I called again, straight to voicemail. The blood pounded in my ears. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. I took a slow, measured breath and dialed my mother instead. She picked up after 2 rings, her voice as sweet as ever. "Oh, sweetheart, I was just thinking about you." I forced my voice to stay steady. "Mom, what's going on with Max's wedding?" A pause, then a sigh. "Oh, honey, don't be upset, okay? It's just Max and Lily want a certain kind of atmosphere, and they're keeping the guest list curated." Curated? Like I was some kind of blemish on their perfect little event? I gritted my teeth. "Let me get this straight. I paid for the entire wedding, but I'm not curated enough to be there?" "Oh, sweetheart, don't be so dramatic," Mom tooted. "It's not personal. Lily's family is just very particular about the kind of guests." "The kind of guests?" My voice sharpened. "What does that mean?" She clicked her tongue. "Well, you work so much, and you don't really mix with their kind of people. It's just..." I hung up. I sat there, gripping my phone so hard my knuckles ached. This wasn't just about the wedding. It was about every single time my family had used me. Every dollar I had handed over, every sacrifice I had made, every time I was expected to be the responsible one while Max coasted through life. And I let it happen. Because whenever I protested, the response was always the same. "But he's your brother." That excuse had been the foundation of my entire childhood. When we were kids, I had to share everything with him. If I got a new toy, Max cried until I gave it to him. If my slice of cake was bigger, my mother would cut it in half and hand the rest to Max. "He's your little brother," she'd say. "You should take care of him." And I did. When Max got in trouble for not doing his homework, I was pressured into doing it for him. When he blew through his money partying, I covered his rent for an entire year. When he dropped out of college and couldn't find a job, my parents convinced me to let him crash at my place, just for a few months. 2 years. For 2 years, I let him leech off me while I worked myself into exhaustion. Because that was my role. The workhorse, the dependable one, the wallet. And now, after funding the most important day of his life, I wasn't even worthy of an invitation? I should have seen this coming. I should have known. I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing, something cold and final settling inside me. This was the last time. I wasn't their safety net anymore. I wasn't their ATM. I wasn't their problem solver. I was done. I had convinced myself I was doing the right thing, that family was supposed to help each other, and every single time, they repaid me with nothing but entitlement. By morning, my anger had settled into something cold, something final. This time, I wasn't letting it go. I called my mother first. She picked up on the second ring, her voice as bright as ever. "Oh, sweetheart, are you excited for the big day?" I forced my voice to stay level. "Tell me something, Mom. Why wasn't I invited?" A pause. "Oh, honey, don't start this again. We talked about it." "No, you talked. I want an answer." She let out a dramatic sigh, like I was the unreasonable one. "Sweetheart, it's not personal. It's just, you work so much, and you're not really part of their social circle. It would be awkward." I clenched my jaw. "Awkward? You wouldn't fit in, honey. You know how these things are." A short, humorless laugh escaped me. "So let me get this straight. I was good enough to pay for the wedding, but not good enough to attend?" She tooted. Don't be so dramatic. I gritted my teeth. Put Dad on the phone. She huffed but passed it over. My father's voice came through, gruff and impatient. Listen, we don't have time for this nonsense. The wedding is tomorrow. Don't make a scene. My pulse pounded in my ears. Dad, tell me the truth. Did you know? Did you know they weren't inviting me? He exhaled sharply. Look, Max and Lily made their decision. It's their wedding, and you just went along with it. My stomach twisted. I went along with it? I funded the entire thing. Son, don't be selfish. It's their day, and honestly, maybe it's for the best. You have a tendency to. To what? I snapped. To make things harder than they need to be. Just let it go. I let out a sharp laugh, shaking my head. Wow, you really don't see it, do you? See what? He asked, irritation creeping into his tone. That you've been using me my entire life. Don't be ridiculous. I took a slow breath, my decision solidifying. I'm done. What? I'm done with all of you. Don't call me, don't ask me for money, don't expect a single thing from me ever again. Silence, then, a scoff. Oh, come on, don't be childish. I didn't respond. You can't just cut off your family. I smiled coldly. Watch me. Then I hung up. I sat there, staring at my phone, hands shaking. I expected silence after that. Maybe, just maybe, they'd understand. Maybe they'd finally get that I was serious. I was wrong. The storm hit the next morning. I woke up to 22 missed calls from my mother, 10 from my father, 3 from Max, and over 40 messages. We need to talk. You're being irrational. This is not how family treats each other. Call me back now. You're embarrassing us. I turned off my phone. An hour later, the pounding on my front door started. Not knocking, pounding. My stomach twisted. No one ever came by unannounced. I checked the peephole. It was my mother. Her face was tight with anger, hands clenched into fists. She looked furious. I sighed. This wasn't going to be easy. I cracked open the door. Mom? She shoved past me, storming inside before I could stop her. What is wrong with you? She snapped. I took a slow breath. Good morning to you too. Don't start with that tone. She hissed. Do you have any idea what you've done? You humiliated your brother. You humiliated this family. I stared at her in disbelief. I humiliated you? My voice was eerily calm. You cut me out of the wedding after I paid for it, and now you're mad at me? She folded her arms. You're being dramatic. I let out a hollow laugh. Dramatic? I gave everything to this family, and the second I say no, you all act like I never existed. Her eyes darkened. You're making a scene. That's why Max didn't want you there. You always make things about yourself. That hit harder than I expected. I swallowed the lump in my throat. No, Mom, I make things about survival. I worked myself to the bone so that Max could have a free ride. I spent years putting you all first. And for what? She flinched, but only for a second. Max is your brother. You should support him. I clenched my fists. And what about me? When have any of you ever supported me? She exhaled sharply. We raised you. We gave you everything. You gave me expectations. That's not love. That's control. Silence. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Fine, she said coldly. If that's how you feel, then you can deal with the consequences. I narrowed my eyes. What consequences? Her gaze was sharp, calculating. You think you can just cut us off? That's not how this works. You'll see the consequences. I stepped closer, voice low. No, Mom, you'll see the consequences. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Leave, I said. She hesitated, then turned on her heel and stormed out. I closed the door, locked it, and exhaled a breath I had been holding for years. It was over. Or at least, I thought it was. Until Max called me later that night. And this time, he wasn't calling to apologize. This time, he was calling to destroy me. Max's name flashed on my screen. My heart pounded. I could ignore him, block his number, pretend he didn't exist. But something inside me whispered, no, pick up, end this. So I did. Hello? His voice was sharp. What the hell is wrong with you? I leaned against the counter, gripping the phone tight. Excuse me? You just cut off mom and dad, just like that? I exhaled slowly. Yes. You're such a selfish piece of. I laughed, bitter. I'm selfish? Yes, he shouted. You abandoned your own family after everything they did for you. I shook my head. Everything they did to me. You mean? Oh, don't start with that victim complex. He sneered. You think you're some kind of martyr? Newsflash. Dude, no one cares. I clenched my jaw. Then why are you calling me, Max? Silence. I smirked. You need money, don't you? Silence. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, I shouldn't have to ask. A laugh escaped me, bitter and sharp. Oh my God, you actually think I owe you? You're my brother, he said, his voice low, challenging. No, Max, I was your wallet. His breath hitched, the words catching him off guard. You're such a disappointment, I said, each word cold and precise. And you're a leech. The silence lingered, but now, something darker seeped into the air, a quiet threat. You're going to see the consequences, he said, his voice steady, but something menacing beneath it. A chill ran down my spine. What's that supposed to mean? You'll see. And with that, he hung up. I stared at the screen, my heart racing, my pulse quickening. Something was wrong, very wrong. It started small. A denied transaction on my credit card, an email from my bank asking if I had recently changed my address. Then a week later, I woke up to see my account drained, every penny gone. I sat there, staring at the empty balance, mind struggling to process what I was seeing, and then the phone rang. Sir, the bank representative said, we have reason to believe this was an unauthorized transaction. The funds were transferred to a joint account under your family's name. A joint account? My family's name? My stomach dropped. So, you're telling me my own brother stole my money? The woman hesitated. Legally, since the account was previously linked to yours, it doesn't qualify as theft. I nearly dropped the phone. Not theft. Because, legally, my money had been theirs. I had never thought to remove their names. I had never imagined they'd use it against me. I drove straight to my parents' house, fury simmering beneath the surface. The second my mother opened the door, I pushed past her without a word. She gasped. Excuse me? Where is he? My voice was low, controlled, barely holding the anger in check. She crossed her arms. You have no right to barge in here. Where is he? I demanded again, my patience gone. Then, a slow clap echoed from the hallway. Max stepped into view, that smug smile on his face. Well, he said. Look who finally decided to visit. I saw red. I lunged at him, grabbing his collar and slamming him against the wall. Give it back. He didn't flinch. He just smiled. That smug, infuriating smile. No. I shoved harder. I swear to God. Max. What? He sneered. You'll hit me? Go ahead. Prove to mom and dad what a bad guy you are. I froze. The realization hitting me, he wanted this. He wanted me to lose control. He wanted to give them an excuse to turn this all back on me. I let go and stepped back. Max smoothed his shirt, like I hadn't just threatened him. Smart choice. I turned to my parents, my voice colder than it had ever been. You let him do this? My father shrugged, as indifferent as ever. You should have stayed loyal to your family. Something inside me shattered. I took a step back, looking at them for the first time as if they were strangers. They didn't care. They never had. They never would. I exhaled, steadying myself. Okay. Max frowned. What? I smiled, slow, almost pitying. Okay, then. I walked out, my body numb. 2 months. That's how long it took to rebuild. I filed a fraud claim. It was denied. I hired a lawyer. He told me I had a case. I sued them. I sued my own family. Max played the victim. Of course. He cried on social media about how money tore us apart. My parents begged me to drop it, but I didn't. This time, I wasn't saving them. This time, I was saving myself. The lawsuit dragged on. The courtroom felt like a battlefield, but in the end, I won. The judge ruled in my favor. Max was forced to pay back every cent, When he couldn't, his precious wedding fund was seized. His car was repossessed. His perfect little world came crashing down. And my parents? They called. They begged. They apologized. I blocked their numbers. And for the first time in my life, I was finally free. It's been a year. A year without phone calls demanding money. A year without waking up to panicked messages about someone needing my help. A year without feeling like I existed for anyone but them. For the first time, I am free. It wasn't easy. Cutting them off felt like tearing a piece of myself away. No matter how much they hurt me, they were still family. There were nights I lay awake, wondering if I had done the right thing, if I had gone too far, if I was truly as selfish as they said. But then I'd remember everything, the years of being used, the emotional blackmail, the money I worked for that disappeared into their hands, the wedding, the betrayal. That's when the guilt would fade, and all that would remain was a quiet, overwhelming sense of relief. Max is gone. He cut me off completely after the lawsuit, deleted me from social media, blocked my number. I haven't heard from him since. My parents, though, they tried to hold out at first. They were furious. They called me every name in the book. They told the entire extended family that I had turned my back on them, that I was heartless, ungrateful, that after everything they had done for me, I betrayed them. But then, months later, the tone shifted. A few weeks ago, my mother sent me a message. Son, let's talk. We all made mistakes. You don't want to live with regret, do you? I stared at the screen for a long time. Regret? What exactly was I supposed to regret? That I stopped letting them treat me like a walking ATM? That I stopped allowing them to manipulate me? That I finally put myself first? And yet, there was hesitation, because as much as I wanted to believe I had moved on, there was a small part of me still craving something I never had. A real family. A mother who loved me for more than what I could provide. A father who saw me as something more than a financial backup plan. A brother who actually cared. A small, foolish part of me wondered, had they changed? I didn't respond. I told myself I needed more time. A few days later, another message came. Your father and I miss you. Max wants to make amends too. Let's sit down and talk. Just once. No expectations. No pressure. I laughed when I read it. No expectations. No pressure. That's what they always said right before they asked me for something. Still, the thought gnawed at me. What if, after everything, they really did want to fix things? What if this was my chance to have the family I'd always wanted? Or what if this was just another trap? I haven't answered them yet. I don't know if I will, because I know how this goes. I let them back in, and for a while, everything will seem fine. They'll play nice, act loving, tell me they've changed, and then, one day, I'll get a message. Hey, we're struggling with some bills right now. Max just needs a little help getting back on his feet. We knew we could count on you. And suddenly, I'll be right back where I started. So I'm asking you, what would you do? Would you give them another chance? Or would you walk away for good? Goodbye.